Welcome. I'm Julie Bacon, and you're listening to the Mindset Coaching for Handlers podcast, a podcast for dog handlers who are on a mission to achieve big goals. Here I share lessons, insights, personal stories, and tools you can apply during your next show, trial, or test to help you strengthen your mental game and hopefully cue more consistently. Be sure to check out the show notes where you'll find details about the episodes, plus important links, including the link to the Dogged Planner and Workbook created just for handlers on a mission. So if you're ready to improve your competitive mindset, get out of your own way, and connect with your dog like never before, then it's time to get comfy, bring an open mind, and work your mindset. Hey there, and welcome back to the podcast. Okay, this week we are talking about how perfection can steal our joy. Now, I know that there are my fellow recovering perfectionists are out there, but there's also a bunch of you who aren't perfectionists, and fantastic. It's good to be you, okay? But I'm really not talking so much about us wanting everything to be perfect as I am the fact that we are measuring our joy in the ring, or we're measuring how our weekend went relative to whether or not we cued, okay? We are measuring by, I always say, like the ribbons on your dashboard driving home, okay? And if we're measuring our joy or our progress or our success only by that metric, only by how many green ribbons or placements or points or what have you, then you are probably having some weekends that aren't a lot of fun. Because when that dashboard is empty, right, that becomes a very long drive home if that is the only way that you are measuring success. Okay? So that's what we're going to get into today, right? Because cues really should just be milestones, but our growth and our progress should be how we're measuring on a regular basis. Okay? They say it's a cliche. Whoever they are that make up these things, but like, yes, it sounds like a cliche, but it really is the journey. And if you think about how much work and time and effort we have to put in order just to prepare to walk into a ring of any size or shape, then we realize that, yeah, we really do have to be committed to all of the pieces and parts of this passion that we are devoted to at this point. Because if you're listening, you're probably, some of your friends at some time have called you a crazy dog person. So, I call them the muggles, right? The non-dog people have probably called you that, but we know better. This is our passion. This is what we love. This is what we devote our time and energy to. Okay. But at the same time, we are also responsible for how we measure success. So sometimes we are the ones making ourselves miserable, okay? Because if we're only measuring success by cues or titles or points or what have you, and there's no other way that we're measuring, then whenever we have a not great weekend, then we have to be depressed. We're depressing ourselves, right? We're making ourselves miserable by that, okay? So we're going to try to flip that around. And by the way, I say try only in that this is work. Like some of us, I put myself in this bucket, some of us are wired and have been long taught for decades to think about our success in terms of things you can see, touch, feel. Right? Whether it's a green ribbon or whether it's, points in a computer or a piece of parchment or whatever it is, we've been taught that way, right? School, at least the American system, right, is report cards and certificates and, all of this kinds of stuff. So we're used to being able to talk about our progress and our accomplishments in very tangible terms. And I think that's part of the reason we struggle sometimes to celebrate progress, right, or process goals, because they don't feel as tangible. It doesn't feel like something I can hold in my hand and show you, or God forbid, post a picture on Monday morning on Facebook, right? So that mentality, though, that same mentality that we learn to strive for and go for and be proud of, and by the way, you should absolutely be proud of every one of your accomplishments, but that same structure can turn on us, essentially, and end up making us like very sad, right? Or make us want to not post or want to not try or want to, God forbid, not go to the next trial or not go to or skip class because we get in such a funk about it. And some of our funks, I'm going to argue, are self-induced, okay? Because we're looking at the wrong things. We're measuring by the wrong things, okay? And I think that there is a pressure to be clean and to cue and things like that because even other competitors will say, oh, hey, how'd it go? And we assume that their question means, did you cue? That's our assumption. They may mean that, they may not mean that, but that sure is the story we're telling. So then, of course, we respond with either, hey, it was great. Yeah, we got it. We cued, whatever. Or we respond with, oh, well, it wasn't great. We didn't cue. We didn't make it. Something happened. This happened, whatever. And then we start telling stories. Okay. And it's those stories that we tell when we don't really know. Like that person really could have just been asking like, hey, how'd it go? You could have said, oh my God, we had fun. Oh my God, we got our weaves, or my footwork on that figure 8 was freaking textbook, or whatever, but we don't, because we assume what they're asking is it a measurement that we can see on the board? That kind of figurative board, right? So when we have this mindset over and over again, we get more frustrated, right? More disappointed, or we get disappointed faster because, oh my God, it's been 3 weekends or, 3 trials or 6 classes or whatever it is that you're counting since we've gotten our last cue, right? Well, yeah, that becomes really disappointing if that's your only metric. Now, to flip it around, there are times where we've not cued and felt really great about it. Or there are times that we've cued and felt terrible about it because we know that we just squeaked it out or got a gift or, got the extra point, or the judge didn't see the mistake or something. And we can even feel bad about a cue sometimes, right? So it works on all the different levels. But again, the theme of this all is when we are focused on the outcome and specifically all the things that have to go right in order for us to cue, and we're only measuring our success by that, it can be a very frustrating place to live, to compete from. And that kind of thinking is only going to make us more nervous, put more pressure on ourselves, because if that's the only thing we're measuring, then, oh my God, now I have to be perfect. And, oh my God, if we screw up the first piece of it, that whether it's an obstacle or exercise or whatever, now all hope is lost. I mean, it gets very dramatic in our heads, does it not? I mean, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the only one who's dramatic in my stories. But it does get dramatic up there. Okay. So obviously we want to kind of diffuse it, right? We want to diffuse this need to have to cue in order to be successful. And of course, one of the ways is structuring goals. I'm going to say that because I'm a goals girly, but I'll talk about that in a second. Because the first thing I want you to start doing is when you're headed for a trial, I don't care if you're, it's Tuesday and you have a trial coming up over the weekend. I want you to start thinking about what success looks like for that weekend. Like if you really zoom out, right? What would be a successful weekend? And if you zoom out and the first thing you say is, if I finish the title, okay? Well, now you know that that's where your gut, probably your head, heart, and gut all are. You're living in that vibe of I got to finish this title. And maybe you are running out of quote time because you've got some other goals or something like that, or maybe you just want to get it over with, right? I've been there recently myself. I can relate. But that will be a really good sign for you to know that you are living in that sort of outcome space where only the cue matters. However, if you say what does success look like for maybe, maybe could it be a big event? Maybe you're going to a cup or an open or something like that. And you really look at it and you're like, you know what? This is a young dog. I just want to go get him some good miles, have a good experience, maybe have fun, see some people. then great. Then that's how you need to measure your weekend. Then on Sunday, when you're driving home, if I were to sit on your shoulder and say like, hey, how'd it go this weekend? You can't talk to me about cues. You have to talk to me about like, yep, I did it. I got my young dog some really good exposure. I, got to see some friends, and there were a couple runs that I really just freaking enjoyed. Like, we had a good time out there. So yeah, it was a success. And you might or might not even tell me that you cued or didn't cue, because you were focused on what success looks like. And the thing is it's not bad to have a goal of cueing. I will never tell you that. I have goals of cueing all the time, okay? All the time. However, when we are living and dying by that cue, meaning our how happy we are, or how bummed out we are, or how we feel about our dogs or ourselves on, Sunday night is determined by a 75-cent ribbon, then we have to say, hey, self, let's take a look in the mirror and let's see if we are going about this with the right mindset. Okay? Because the truth of the matter is, we don't control whether or not we cue. We can prepare, we can do all the rituals, we can do all the things, and we can even have a really great run and the judge make a funky call, right? Or the fan suddenly kicks on, or the garage door opens, or something bizarre happens, or a baby starts crying in the corner. Like, who's to know, right? A lot of variables have to go just right in order for us to cue, okay? Some of them we can train and prepare for. Some of them are like freak stuff. So we only can do so much, which is, of course, what drives us control freaks, or us recovering control freaks, crazy, right? Because we don't control the environment. We don't even control our dogs. We influence our dogs, we prepare, but at the end of the day, we don't control that either. Okay? So I want you to start thinking about how you own this. Right? How you own this. Like, when are the times where you are thinking only about the outcome and measuring by the outcome? Or maybe you're walking into the ring thinking about process goals, but when you walk out of the ring, suddenly you're measuring the run, not by whether or not you executed those process goals, but by whether or not you cued. Okay? That's another clue, right? That even, subconsciously, quote, all that matters, if you will, is whether or not you cued. Okay, so we're going to start turning this around right after this. Struggling with ring nerves, inconsistency, or confidence? Let's fix that. With one-on-one coaching, we'll tackle your specific challenges and create a plan tailored to you, because your journey is unique and your mindset game should be too. My clients see breakthroughs every week. Are you next? Let's chat. Book a session now by heading to thecuecoach.com. All right, back to it. All right, let's start to turn this around. And as we do, I want you to have in your mindset this concept of playing the long game, right? It's something I talk about a lot with clients especially, but maybe you've heard me even talk about it before on here. And that's that every time we walk into the ring, we aren't just performing for that moment, but we are making an investment in our future. In our future partnership, in the future dogs' experiences, how they will be, in 10 runs from now. So if we think about that, then we are thinking in terms, again, not of the outcome of that day, but like, is what I'm doing today with my dog going to help me in the future? Okay, for future runs. Or maybe if I make a mistake in the run and I've already NQ'd, then how can the rest of it really be an investment in, I want the dog to have a good experience, or I want to work on a skill, or I want to make sure my dog finishes this confidently, or I want to make sure I finish this confidently, okay? We need to remember that every time we walk in the ring is another experience our dog, our team, is having that will affect our future. And when we start to look at it like that, then we start to think, well, certainly any quote failure is definitely feedback. It's definitely information in terms of from what we need to work on to that was really curious that my dog did that in this environment. note to self, right? I'm going to learn from that. But when we start to really think of like everything we do with our dogs is an investment in our future results, our future partnership, then it really does start to change our mindset about not just walking in expecting the cue. Because the cue is looking at something today. Taking the long run is looking at your future success, right? Especially, of course, with young dogs, but even with like that old comfy slipper too, because you still want them to be having good experiences. You know, I once heard this, somebody said this thing, and it was like, you know, when you, come out of the ring, like how you react is going to affect the next 10 runs, right? Your response to your run is going to affect the next 10 runs. And that really stuck with me, whether it's mathematically correct or not. Conceptually, how we process our runs and how we feel about it and what we do with that information, that it can have such a long tail or such a long impact, like 10 more runs. That's a lot of runs, right? So I always want to be thinking about the long game, about investing, about the future, about how my performance today is helping or hurting the future that I want to have with my dogs, right? So that gets into one of the first practical shifts, which is redefining our success, what success looks like beyond the cue for today. Okay? Yes, we all want a cue today. We all want to cue today. I want to cue today, tomorrow, and the next day, and I want to cue in all my classes and yada, yada. Of course, I want that. I wish for that. But is that an appropriate goal, outcome goal? Should I even be focused on that, or should I really be focused on all of the things it takes to put myself in a position to hopefully maybe cue, right? Because at the end of the day, it comes down to a judge or, another entity or whatever, or something happening in the ring, to really determine whether or not that happens. Okay. So let's redefine what success looks like and have that conversation with yourself earlier in the week of like what success looks like for that weekend coming up. Okay. I want you to pair your outcome and growth goals. So, because I don't want you just to have a cue. I want you to also want to improve. Okay. I feel like when we just focus on the cue, that's an ending. Like that's the period at the end of the sentence. Right? But to be focused on growth means that you're always focusing on improvement. And if you're always focusing on improving, then of course the cues are going to come because you're getting better, you're getting sharper, your skills are coming along, you're getting more reps under you. Your dog's getting more experience, you're getting more experience as a team. You're focused on that improvement, the cues are going to come. It's just like mathematically the way the world works, right? As soon as we start to focus on growth and improvement and mastery, then we start to get the results that we crave so much, okay? Of course, a habit of reflection and looking back over the weekend or feedback or however you do that, just pick a habit. I don't care if every Monday morning you pick up the smallest sticky note known to man and write 3 words on it as your point of feedback for the weekend. Just do something. Do something. Because again, we don't just look back 1 week and expect to see progress. We look back over like 30, 60, even better 90 days. And when we have those bigger swaths, even if we are in the middle of a so-called slump, if we look back 90 days, we can really start to see improvement. Okay, we can really start to see that like, oh, my rituals have just become habit now, or my dog is really getting more confident at this, or, that skill that I didn't have before is really starting to feel comfortable instead of so awkward. Because new skills always feel like, I don't know, I always feel like I'm in someone else's body trying to like do the skill, right? But it's starting to feel like normal again, right? So when we have the feedback and that allows us to look back further, we can start to see the progress. And we can start to see the progress in black and white. It's not like we're making it up, right? It's there. It's there on paper. Okay? The other thing that helps us shift in like a really practical way is just ask, what did I learn? Instead of being bummed out about the cue, the lack of cue or something, or the lack of ribbons on the dashboard, just like, what did I learn this weekend? What did I learn from that run? What did I learn? And maybe it's something you can take action on. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's like, well, I learned that if a baby starts screaming in the corner, that's really going to affect my dog. Now, are you going to go rent a baby that screams in the corner during your lessons? Probably not, or I hope not. But you learned something. Okay. And maybe it's something that will never happen again. It was just a random freak thing. Or maybe it is something, like I said, you can take action on. But ask yourself, what did I learn? Okay. And also ask yourself, how will this help us, this lesson, this moment of growth? How will this help us 6 months, a year from now? How will having had this experience make us a better team? And I think that is really powerful. Okay. The other thing that I will add here is, as competitors, because we're all fellow competitors, see each other at trials, you see the same group of people often, stop asking each other, how did it go? Or did you cue? Or did you get it? Right? That's a pretty common agility thing I hear. Did you get it? Start asking, did you have fun? Or are you having a good day? Or, something. Change the narrative. If you don't want someone asking you if you cued, then don't ask somebody else if they cued, okay? Let's start shifting the perspective on what enjoying a trial looks like, okay? Yes, the big ribbons, the pretty ribbons are lovely. I love pretty ribbons, okay? I do too, all right? But I know that I'm not going to get the pretty ribbon if I don't focus on the things I can control, which are the process goals. Okay, which are the perspective of how am I defining success, and is a little bit of letting go of the outcome in favor of focusing on growth and process goals and improving and skill building and making long-term investments in my team. Okay. So those practical shifts, those also kind of become your homework this week, right? Those are the things you have to start to incorporate and start to kind of try on, or use those tools so that when you need them, they are comfortable and that they will work for you. Okay. Joy and growth come when you let go of this perfection and you play the long game, right? You look at it as a long-term thing, then individual runs matter a lot less. The people I see get the most disappointed in a single run are the ones that are holding each run as precious. Every time they walk in the ring, they're like, I've got to do this. And that run is up on a pedestal and it is so precious and it's so loaded and everything is just relying. There's so much pressure, right? Everything's riding on this one run to be amazing. Good grief. That makes me nervous talking about just a made up scenario, right? But it happens all the time. When we put our runs on pedestals and we make them out to be these super important life or death situations, how can we not fall short, right? We're setting ourselves up, which goes all the way back to the top. And what we were starting to talk about is a lot of the times we are the source of our own joy stealing. Okay, we're stealing our joy from ourselves. We can have a really great, maybe even fun weekend with our dogs and not cue. It's possible. It's possible. I've done it. It happens. Okay. But it means we have to be focused on process. We have to be focused on what success is going to look like, especially if we have young dogs that, their progress path looks a little bit jagged, right? Up, down, sideways, loop to loop, before they're really going forward. We have to enjoy the ride and we have to invest in growth and invest in that long game. Okay. Because remember, the cues are milestones. They're just little measurements along the way, oh, great. Yay, today. But growth is the legacy. Growth is forever. Growth, the long game, all of that. This dog's going to make you better for 2 dogs from now, kind of a thing, right? You're always investing, always playing the long game, always looking ahead. That means that every run is information, even when they are the fantastic, wonderful cues. Okay. All right. So I hope that helps you shift right? We all get into this pattern. You're not alone. I was very recently in this pattern quite deeply. That's probably why I'm talking about it today. And in any case, whatever you do with your dogs this week, I hope you have a fantastic time. Thanks so much for listening to the Mindset Coaching for Handlers podcast with me, Julie Bacon. I am so grateful for your precious time. Check out my Dogged Planner workbook and journal available on Amazon. Just search for Dogged Planner. I also offer monthly membership that's perfect for ongoing support of your awesome goals. Check out theqcoach.com for details, or just stop by and check out all the ways you can work on your mindset. And be sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at theqcoach and let me know how it's going. Finally, please share, subscribe, and leave a review. This helps us podcasters tremendously. Plus, I know I get my best podcast recommendations from friends. Thanks, and have a great week with your dogs.